was a layered operation that achieved many objectives, but it facilitated the growth of the state as well. And it facilitated that path of the dystopian nightmare, and the violation of our inherent rights. So that was an inherent example of the federal government's abuse of power.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
And way down we go. Oh, way down we go. Say way down we go. And way down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to the dark. Yes, then they will run you down till you fall. Oh, and they will run you down till you go. Yeah, till you can't crawl no more.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the No Way Jose podcast. Today, I am joined by Kirk Lyons. If you're here, you probably know why. He is, if you're into the Oklahoma City bombing, Waco, Ruby Ridge, anything in that, that milieu of topics, he is kind of at the center of a lot of these things. He was a lawyer during this period of time, and so we have a lot to talk about today. I do want to give a little bit of a caveat before we go into it. If you've watched my entire playlist, my Oklahoma City bombing playlist, and if not, I suggest you have, probably have a rough idea of what my take is. So the chances that me and Kirk agree completely is pretty slim to none. And I don't feel like I need to give that preamble to my audience, but I just want to throw that out there. I don't intend on doing any sort of gotcha anything with Kirk here today. So if he says things and you feel like I should have pushed back, well, they may not have done that intentionally. If you have any, concerns about that, feel free to hit me up. But I'm just saying, no, whether I challenge him or not or anything, or him saying anything, do not take that in any way, shape, or form as me acknowledging or not agreeing with anything he said. He is a historical figure, and no matter what you take him as, as a character here, we have to hear him out, whether you want to prove him wrong or if you just wanted to corroborate other things going on. So with that, let's go ahead and get Kirk on here. I'm actually pretty excited, even though I gave that caveat. He is an interesting character, and he does touch feet, I guess, with a lot of people that I'm very interested in. So I'm very much looking for this conversation. Without further ado, what's up, Kirk? How are you doing? It's a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me on. I've I said before the broadcast began, that I just finished Margaret Roberts' book. And I felt that might be a good prep for our conversation. And I have changed a lot in the last few years. I'm working with people that I didn't even talk to when all of this was going on in the 90s. I consider Jesse Trentadue a friend and an ally. I'm working with Wendy Painting, who did the book on Tim McVeigh. I look at it as a joint search for truth.
100%.
I'm going to be 70 on my next birthday, and I would just like to know what the hell really happened. I think we all do. And I'm a historian. If you know anything about me, I love history. And I actually got my degree in history before going to law school. I would like, for the first time in the modern history of the United States, for this government to come clean with what it did and what they know and what they're hiding for once. And I think a lot of things are related. Oklahoma City bombing is related to Waco. It's related to Ruby Ridge. It's related to the 1993 Twin Towers bombing. It's related to 911. If the Twin Towers bombing in 93 is relatable, then so is 911. So it's a big egg to crack. And I think there's enough of us out there that know something or think they know something, that if we all work together, I think we can crack this egg open and find out what really happened.
I agree.
Pretty. It's not going to be pretty, but I think we can give the American people the truth.
I agree, and I think we're in a unique period in time, which actually I think that is pretty feasible right now. There's a lot of other things going on they want to distract from, and so they might accidentally give us a little bit of truth, at this point in time, a little bit ahead of schedule compared to some other deep events we've had in the past. But sorry, it seems like you want to say something.
Well, it's 30 years ago. It's historical.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like me when I was a kid studying the Depression. It's that far away, so it's historical, and people are aging. People like to get stuff off their chest. People generally don't like to destroy documents, and who knows what we're going to find. I'm very optimistic. I think enough people know enough where we can probably learn a lot more. We have a window. I think I give my generation 10 years, and then we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be in hospice care at old folks' homes. But I think this Generation Z got an attitude, and they want to know the truth, and they're tired of being lied to, and they're tired of being pushed off the stage. And I have a lot of hopes for Generation Z. So.
I don't disagree with you. My kids definitely have quite that attitude. They're not getting shamed into following into the narrative anymore. At least not this generation. Maybe future generations, but I think they screwed the pooch on that one. And I think Oklahoma City bombing and the series of unfortunate events that unfolded after and before it contributed to that very, very such thing. So today, it's actually kind of, this is an interesting series of events. I think it found you in the comment section. And that's kind of what led this off. I believe you had, I don't know if it was contentions or maybe you just wanted to provide specifics on something pertaining to Holloway. And I think we'll get to that. I don't know if maybe that wants to be where you lead with, but I wanted to, before we got too much into it, I wanted to give you the chance to kind of give yourself, because I don't feel like I did any justice, but give yourself, I guess maybe your elevator intro of who you are, what you've done, because you have done a lot, and I actually feel like, if anything, I'm almost kind of under-equipped, although in a weird way, how many people have really read like a smorgasbord of Oklahoma City bombing research books and stuff. But even then are a very specific niche within such thing. You're the kind of in this nexus of like a federal infiltration, the militia movement, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call colloquially the white power movement or whatever is going, all these different, this nexus of things. And you're kind of hanging out in this area. God, where was it? Oh, anyways, point being is you are an important figure, but I haven't delved enough or as much as I'd like to. So I definitely do not give it justice. Obviously, I'm more concerned when it comes to Oklahoma City bombing. That's my area, but I know you've done so much more. I know you were involved I think this is kind of where you kind of, I guess, got your starts, you could say, in a sense, with the sedition trial, which is really kind of a precursor to a lot of this. Whatever this, as I kind of mentioned, this nexus of like militia, federal infiltration, whatever type stuff. But anyways, enough of that. Just kind of, I want to just make sure, don't want to give anyone the impression my lack of an intro is anything. This is actually a pretty big interview, in my opinion. This is the second time I think you've gone on any sort of thing like this in over a couple decades. The last one was on, I do want to give them the shout out because I'm not going to go as much into so much details as some of the stuff as these guys did, but I do think it's well worth the listen. You went on, what was it? Actually, I have it on my phone right now, and I've watched this before, but I re-listened to it today for prep.
It was another podcast. It was about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it was a good one. The Farm Podcast, just to give them a shout out if anyone wants to get a more complete understanding of a lot of stuff we'll be talking about today. But this is from the Farm Podcast, Mach 2, Patriot Games with Kirk Lyons. Also, Wendy Painting was also on that one, and a couple other people.
I would find that link because I need to archive that. I need to be able to find it. I got my start as I'm the son of a career Air Force officer from Texas. We bounced around in his career. 6.5 years in the California school system. Ended up in Texas after he retired from the Air Force in Austin. I went to the University of Texas, got a degree in history. Couldn't pass the physical to get into the military because of asthma, so I didn't go to Texas A&M. I went to the University of Texas, got my degree in history, and then went to law school at the University of Houston. I started out doing personal injury law for literally a guy that advertised on television, and ended up being Louis Ray Beam's attorney. He literally came to my door and asked me to help him. That's a long story. That one might cost you a bottle of scotch to hear that full story. But anyway, I represented Louis Beam before he was indicted in the Fort Smith sedition trial. And he basically fled to Mexico before he was indicted. He married a 19-year-old Sunday school teacher and was hiding in Chapala, Mexico. And the FBI found him, surrounded him, called out the Mexican army, literally, and the local Mexican drug people. And they surrounded his house and shot it full of holes, captured him, and his wife shot a Mexican federale and nearly killed him. And bad things happened to her. And anyway, I was a personal injury lawyer, and probably 2/3 of my clients were people of color. And here, the former Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan in Texas, who was a public figure in Houston media, was asking me to help, like he had done a year and a half previously. And I said that I would, but this is the kind of thing you lose your job over. So I agonized over it the whole weekend. And Monday morning, I held a press conference and announced that I represented him. And that was just as he landed in Fort Smith, Arkansas, to be put in the Hooskow and stand trial for sedition in a few months. So anyway, that was a 2-month trial. That was my first big trial. I did lose my job, but I went up there and represented Louis Beam along with there were 15 other defendants. It was a 2.5-month trial. It was essentially order trial number 3. And that little bit of history, the order, were these modern Robin Hood guys that stole from armored cars to give to white power people across the country.
They released a movie on it recently for those who do want to dig into a little bit more. I'll be honest, I didn't really care for it. It was a little bit boring. But
it was probably lousy. Yeah,
it was probably not very accurate. If I did guess.
Be the film consultant on stuff like that, because usually they're lousy, stink, bad story. And written by woke people. So
yeah, I did find it odd that did get the Hollywood treatment recently, and it actually got a couple big names for those who are familiar with Hollywood actors. It didn't seem like to me, I don't know, I don't follow movies too much. It didn't seem like it did too well, but it felt weird to me. For someone who maybe notices patterns where they shouldn't sometimes, that one did feel weird to me. Why are you seeding out this right now at this period of time, especially as I alluded to earlier? The order is kind of the root of a lot of this stuff. So It is kind of like, why are you attacking the root right now? What is going on? I see what you're doing. So,
well, anyway, it was a 2.5-month trial. And it was order trial number 3. It was a road show that the Department of Justice under Edwin Meese wanted to do to lock up the right wing, the violent right wing and the rhetorical right wing. That was the plan. Get them all in a conspiracy to overthrow the government and let's lock them all up. Mm-hmm. So the order went down in order trial number 1, and they got long prison sentences. And then there was order trial number 2 in 1986 and 87. And that was in Denver, Colorado. And that was for the murder of the Jewish radio talk show host Alan Berg and other crimes. And more order guys were sentenced to even more prison sentences, so that Bruce Pierce got 250 years in prison, and David Lane got 190 years in prison. And so order trial number 3 was the road show now in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and they got a grand jury to indict not only the order guys who were serving long prison sentences and another subgroup called the CSA, which were also in prison, but they had a witness by the name of Jim Ellison that could tie it up into one great big conspiracy. They were all going to overthrow the government, and they agreed to do it at the 1983 Aryan Nations World Conference. So that was the sedition trial in Fort Smith. They had 15 defendants, massive trial. Government spent $10 million.
Landmark, yeah.
All of the defendants were acquitted. And my client, who was caught in a fiery shootout in Mexico and transported to Arkansas and stood trial, I represented him along with an appointed attorney, and he was acquitted as well. And essentially, they took the violent guys and the guys that just speechified and put them together in one conspiracy. So this was a way of essentially ideologically getting rid of the right wing, and it didn't work. So that was my first big trial. And,
right off the jump. I mean, it was sedition, which it's basically treason. So, I mean, were there even any other sedition trials even in this century? There was
one in 1944, and one of the defendants was still alive. And he came to talk about the 1940 sedition trial, which basically locked up the America First movement, of which Charles Lindbergh was a part. He didn't get arrested. But this guy told a similar story about what the government will do. The problem with, and my reason for opposing sedition as a criminal practice is that it uses conspiracy law to get rid of you. And in conspiracy law, and it's been true since 1798, the Alien and Sedition Act still on the books, in a conspiracy trial, co-conspirator hearsay is okay. You can use hearsay. Well, as a defense attorney, how do you cross-examine hearsay? Answer, you really don't. You really can't. And so if the court allows co-conspirator hearsay, a dead man can testify. And that's exactly what happened in the order trial. You heard all these things that the leader, Robert Matthews, who is now dead, died in a fiery shootout with the feds, thought, said, and did, and it all came in because co-conspirator hearsay. And that's what offended me from a constitutional perspective. And I have opposed it consistently ever since. I think it's bad law, and it's the hallmark of a tyrannical state.
I find that interesting. I find it interesting you mentioned that the last one was in the 1940s. I forget. It just reminds me, it just kind of a sedition trial, just kind of the timing. That was around the time Gordon called, because if we're going into the roots, once again, there's another.
The modern right wing was the Gordon Call murder.
Yeah, so that even then, it's another thing, just kind of these ebbs and flows, these natural cycles, these,
The same year, there was a sedition trial in Memphis, Tennessee. There were like 17 tax protesters that were put on trial, and they were also, I believe, acquitted. And of course, the J6 nonsense had a sedition trial where the government finally smartened up. They finally figured out how to win a sedition trial. Do it in D.C. where they can get the jury they want.
Yeah. And all right. Well,
it was a travesty. The J6 nonsense was a travesty, an absolute hallmark of a police state. I believe we were living under a police state for 4 years under Biden. I believe that the Constitution was suspended, the government was suspended. He was a usurper and a puppet. We were ruled by, who knows, by the auto pen.
No disagree from me there.
my law professor, my legal research professor in college and law school was Elizabeth Warren. Apparently she had free access to the auto pen. So, maybe she'll go to prison someday. I don't know. Still waiting. But anyway, these type of trials, I represented several other high-profile so-called extremists successfully, and I got a track record for high-profile conspiracy prosecutions. Lyons is your guy, because if anybody can get you off, he can. Now, one of my hallmarks, I have an unofficial publicist by the name of the Southern Poverty Law Center. They've been my unofficial publicist for many years. And they never believe anything I say, but believe this. All of the guys I represented back then, I believed they were innocent. I believed they were able to convince me that they didn't do it, that they were innocent. And on that basis, I represented them.
Well, it'll make you feel good to know that I didn't even bother to read the SPLC thing for prep, and I don't think I've ever read it. I just used it as promo. You screenshotted the So this is where SPLC is, I think, for most people.
I have outlasted those bastards.
Yes, no one cares what they have to say.
No longer there. Heidi Byrish is no longer there. Mark Potok is no longer there. That whole crew are gone.
Yeah, it's now a badge of approval.
And the website is forever.
Yeah.
And you know, my gravestone will probably say, you know, former Klan attorney for Louis Beam. And okay, fine. You know, I realize the internet's forever.
I mean, at this point, the
famous being notorious.
Yep. I mean, at this point with the SPLC, I have friends in the SPLC, and they weren't even lawyers, so it's like it's meaningless at this point. They weren't even lawyers for the, you know, whatever for the cause and other such foundations, or for sedition, you know, or for Louis Beam, and even still, there's people. So point being, if they've gone off the deep end, they mean nothing now. If anything, it's a punchline. I'd love to linger at the sedition trial. I do want to say, I think you mentioned in passing the craziness in Mexico prior to the sedition trial. I would recommend, for those who don't dig into that, it is a super interesting topic of discussion, although we'll probably move past the sedition, but I would recommend Ken Silva's reporting. He's done a lot of it, and he's, I believe, there was some, maybe it was a few months ago, there was some sort of newer stuff, I can't recall offhand, but point being, there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of interestingness there, and of how did these people, you know, get essentially away from the authorities there, and then all these you know, odd shootouts and such. But you know, once again, we were trying to do your elevator intro. So we've got your start at over in the sedition trial. So what major from there?
Through my criminal stuff, I represented a guy named Doug Sheets they were trying to give the death penalty to, and he was acquitted. Again, I believed in his innocence, and he had alibi testimony, but he didn't trust the system, so he wasn't willing to participate. And I facilitated him working with the system so that he could be acquitted and be returned to his family. But the slide up to Oklahoma City, I would start with Randy Weaver. Randy Weaver was at my wedding.
Oh,
and
shit.
That's one of the reasons that Morris Dees has always loved me, is because I was married at the Aryan Nations Church. Never mind that I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I'm not identity. I was raised Baptist and then Episcopalian and then very conservative Anglican. I go to a Presbyterian church now.
You didn't marry one of Millar's girls or nothing like that, did you?
No. Okay. Grandpa wanted me to. I could have. Boy, he really wanted me to. But no, at the Aryan Nations Church, Richard Butler, my wife of 35 years, her brother is David Tate, who is a member of the order and is in prison for the rest of his life for the killing of a Missouri State trooper. And to hear Dees tell it, I married her because of her brother. Bullshit. You know, I've been married to her for 35 years. It was a love match. We have 7 kids. I now have 3 going on 4 grandkids.
And I doubt her brother was that cute.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for him. Yeah. You know, there are people that have done worse than him that have been paroled and sent out of prison, but not when you're a member of the order. You know, he'll die in prison.
Okay, so you had Randy Weaver at your wedding. I knew you got married at Aryan Nations.
And we tried to help him. One of his first attorneys was a guy named Everett Hoffmeister, and we tried to work with him to try to help bring Randy down so he could face the music. When it turned into the standoff and then the shootout, we were literally on our way. My staff and I were on our way to the airport to fly to Idaho to file a motion in federal court to pull the feds back, which we later did in Waco. But we heard on the way to the airport that Bo Gritz, Bo Gritz had brought him down, and so game over. So, but anyway, when the Waco standoff, we were ready, and we were the first team, a legal team, to arrive in Waco for the Waco Branch Davidian siege, and we hooked up with David Koреш's former criminal attorney, a guy named Gary Coker, and it was me who got Dick DeGuerin on the case for David Koresh. He'll never give me credit for that, and that's a footnote to history. But for me, Dick DeGuerin would not have been anywhere near Waco. I got him on the case, and he agreed to represent David Koresh. All he wanted was David's mom to call him. And we spent all day with Bonnie Haldeman talking her into calling Dick DeGuerin. And he came down with her the next day. And the rest is history. So we believe, and I believe will believe to my dying day, that Koresh was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And reason why is because DeGuerin had told him, look, David, we can beat this rap in court. And Dick DeGuerin's one of the best attorneys in Texas. He is probably the best trial attorney in Texas. And the reason I knew to call him was because I had been involved in a murder case where I was a witness, and I had seen him at work. And I also, as a witness, I had his secret numbers at the out-of-town ranch where he stayed on weekends. And so I was able to call him and actually get him out of the shower and talk to me. And he came down, and the rest is history. And we had built up a relationship with a lot of other Davidian families. I represented all the UK nationals and Anglo-Jamaicans in the civil trials that came later. I represented them during the siege when we were trying to get their family members out of there. And when they were killed and incinerated by Janet Reno, then it became a civil trial. And I worked with the British consulate to set up attorney relationships for the families. I ended up representing 23 families, mostly all the Anglo-Jamaicans and the burn victims. And then the Oklahoma City bombing took place. I'm a lifelong reenactor, and I was at a Civil War march. We were on a 55-mile march in Selma, Alabama.
Real quick, to back up, just for clarification, you were during the Waco events, and I guess maybe even the Ruby Ridge as well. Was this was Cause already founded at this point? Were you operating under the banner of Cause, or was this something else?
We were operating under the banner of Cause Foundation, and we did represent briefly Randy Weaver and his children. And before Jerry Spence, Admiral of the Fleet, busted us up. He basically put pressure on Randy. He said, look, you can have Lyons as your civil attorney, and you can have me as your criminal attorney, but you can't have both.
And
so
what
pushed Randy off our representing him, and which he bollocksed the case because he turned $120 million civil judgment on behalf of the Weaver family into $1.5 million. It was a $20 million case. He did not, Jerry Spence, the great Admiral of the Fleet, did not sue Lon Horiuchi in his individual capacity. And that was probably by design.
For the audience, what exactly is Cause? How would you describe it? And even then, what's the acronym? Because the acronym I always screw up whenever I try to remember what it is.
It was a form of civil rights for the undefendable. And Cause Foundation stood for Canada, Australia, United States, South Africa, and Europe, which were the places where Western legal traditions prevail and where we believe they were most in danger of dying. And of course, our unofficial publicist, Morris D, says, well, those are all white places, so they're obviously white supremacists. We never said that. We never claimed it. I don't think in anything we ever published, wrote, or did we even use the word white. But, Morris D's et al., they have their agenda, and I was their scratch pad. So we never got. They were our unofficial publicists, and I've gotten a fair story out of the legacy media maybe twice in 40 years. So.
Yeah. Well, what exactly would you call the cause? Was it just you and David Holloway, or was it how many? What kind of
directors that were all attorneys?
Okay, so big firm.
David Holloway was my computer guru and paralegal, and we had a couple of employees, contract employees from time to time, but it was basically a one-room office operation. And it basically was we would never save the Constitution, in our view, by criminal defense. That was a limited. What we needed to do was sue the people that were actually violating people's constitutional and civil rights. So we decided to be a civil action, and that we would theoretically win these lawsuits, and the judgments we would receive would hopefully fund us. It never turned out that way, but that was the idea.
Okay.
And
right.
So we represented, I guess the Waco case was our biggie. We were prepared to represent the Weaver family. And I guess the best day's work I ever did was peacefully ending the Montana Freeman standoff. Longest law enforcement siege in federal law enforcement siege in history. And I walked everybody out of there on the 51st day.
Am I remembering this incorrectly? That was the one that was shortly, a few years before the Oklahoma City bombing, or misremembering events here?
It was my 40th birthday. Was in ¡96.
Okay, so it was after.
It was after. Okay. And I actually got to see my FBI file. It was only about 3 feet high at the time. I didn't get to look through it, but in the phone bank, in the FBI headquarters that I got to go in, they had a phone bank and for the media, and they had Freeman, some of the personalities of the Freeman standoff. I saw my name and Cause Foundation, and there was a pile about 3 feet high. And that was their reference library. If anybody asked a question that needed to be answered, they have the reference material right there. I didn't get to look through it. So.
Well, it sounds like we basically got the intro for specifically for the purposes of this show, because we'll be focusing more on like Oklahoma City bombing and such. So we've kind of given you the intro up until then, and there you have more than enough to say on the topic of the Oklahoma City bombing. So I guess we're kind of.
The reason that I got involved is because I was a personal friend of Andreas, aka Andy the German Strassmeier, and it was. Through my efforts,
clarify, when you say involved, what do you mean?
Well, he was being attacked in what passed for the internet back in those days from J.D. Cash and a guy named Mike Vanderboe that I never liked.
I was just clarifying if you were saying you got into the Oklahoma City bombing like legal stuff, or if you sounds like you jumped to the narrative game a while back. Yeah. Gotcha. I was just clarifying that. I was like, wait, what?
And that's
okay,
how
go ahead.
I got involved. I represented Andy Strassmeier as a friend, as an attorney, and I basically went after the people that were attacking him. And I was trying to give some semblance of balance and sanity, and where I knew I had knowledge of the facts, some reality. And I didn't get very far with that crowd, and it got ugly real quick. And but I am one of these people that believes in an old German saying, never let an asshole have the last word. And I can actually say that in German. And I was so ticked off with these guys that I became a keyboard warrior in defense of Andy. And this went on for several years. And at some point, I'm responsible for getting Andy back to Germany. I did it. And it wasn't a CIA operation. It wasn't anything like that. I had a supporter that I asked him for the money. He gave me $7,000. And that's what got Andy and Dave Holloway back to Germany.
I would assume the supporter is anonymous.
Fly him. Yeah. They flew commercial airline from Guadalajara to Paris, and then took the train back to Germany.
And I have to ask, but I would assume the donor here is anonymous. Like I have to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So,
and nobody gives up their sources like that.
Exactly, but I
He
have
hasn't
to.
been a supporter in many years, but if I hear that he's met his maker, I'd probably give his name.
Yep. Okay. Well, I mean, in the interest of, I knew I was going to get that answer.
Process. Sometimes you have to wait for the answers.
Yep. Okay. So.
It's just like I still consider Andy a friend, and I still have an attorney-client relationship with him. And like I said at the outset, I am in a quest for knowledge, for knowing what the truth is. I want to know what happened. And I have buried the hatchet with a lot of people, and willing to make peace and share information. And what I will say to you, what I've said to everybody else, you have the burden of showing me that Andy is not what I have said he is. Mm-hmm. And if you can show me that, if you can shift the burden, then I can put that question to Andy and say, do I need to continue to represent you, or do I need to cut you loose? But I'm going to have to base that on credible evidence, common sense, and, but not hearsay bullshit.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Andy Strassmeier story has been filled with.
Yeah. I mean, when you get into, tales that have been around for long, there is a lot of things here and there, little tales, things that get added to the way it's told that sometimes you re-examine, you're like, well, I don't know how legit that really is. And there's something to that. And you did kind of hone in a little bit. I know we're starting maybe at the end a little bit, but I kind of have to ask while it's still on my mind, just kind of the getting out, the story of him getting out of Germany. You just to rehash that, you said the $7,000 donor money, I guess you arranged this in some degree or form. I know the typical, obviously I'm not here to, I don't even know, I didn't even try to get primary source or anything off the top of my head. I'm just more or less trying to hear what you have to say here. But I know how it's typically sort of told is that Holloway either escorted or assisted in some way, or did he accompany him along the trip, or no?
Dave took charge of him. I believe they drove first to Atlanta and then to Corpus Christi, Texas, and they met up with Richard Sherrow, who was our expert witness in the Waco, in the Branch Davidian civil case. He was a former ATF agent and explosive ordnance disposal guy. He's the one that took the famous photograph of Andy in front of the U.S. flag. Yeah, and he did that was when he wrote used, I guess, quotes from that to write the piece. It was like bombs. I forget the name of the piece, but it's like a pretty famous piece. It was one of the last pieces. Yeah. It's where he disputed a lot of the. Was Richard Sherrow.
Yeah.
Anyway, they then figured out about getting Andy across the border, and they crossed the border. Probably, I'm just trying to think where it would have been. I don't think it was El Paso, but it might have been. And they traveled by bus to near Guadalajara, and they took a flight from Guadalajara to Paris, and then from Paris they took a train to Germany, and that's where Andy was reunited with his family. So that's how he got out. I've heard people say that there's this unattributed rumor that Holloway was a CIA agent, which the only time that ever came out is Dave's kind of a self-promoter, and he claimed to have worked for Air America to several people. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. Yeah, it was my understanding. I believe it was on his LinkedIn at some point. Although that's one of those ones I can't verify. That's what I don't recall. I'd have to I might have it saved somewhere, but yeah. There's a 302 file where he freaked out some poor guy at a gun show. Yeah, telling him all his stories. Oh, well, if you have that one, I'd love to see that. I've not seen that. I'll be happy to show you. Yeah. And anyway, he claimed that he worked for Air America, and that's where the story got in to that he's some CIA guy. Yeah, which even then, it's like that's a front, to be fair, although that's kind of how it works with the agency. It's never like, hey, I'm a CIA agent. It's someone working for a front. Dave now works for NASA.
Yep.
And I've spent a lot of time with Dave and did a lot of stuff with Dave and hung out with a lot of people with Dave that our government would not approve of.
Mm.
How does he get top secret security clearance?
Well, Dave worked next to you. I mean, we brought up the point.
How
Like,
did
I'm
he
not. I don't justify.
No, maybe I'm a CIA agent, and the spotlight said I was for years.
Yeah.
I'm a CIA.
Well, whether you are or not, your cover was, if you are a CIA agent, was lawyer to, you know, the most hated people of the time of America. So it's like, I mean, I'm not at all advocating the idea that you couldn't keep a job, or that if, let's say your friend Holloway, I don't think he shouldn't be hired by NASA due to some maybe dubious past, perhaps. But how did you get that?
Security clearance.
Yeah.
That means that they would have talked to me and talked to Neil Payne and a lot of other people like Louis Bean. Those people, we never heard from them. So how does he pass top secret security clearance?
I guess maybe we'll have to come back to Strassmeier, because I guess we're on Holloway. So I want to start with him, because it sounds to me like you've kind of, I know you're being, I think you're being, sounds to me like you're not wanting to go to grand speculation, and I get that. I totally get that. But it sounds to me like you have your suspicions about someone who is even a friend. I don't know what those suspicions should be, but obviously you're pointing out, these are things I've pointed out myself, that this is odd. What is going on here? So I guess I kind of have to ask, just kind of, what do you know about this guy? I mean, sometimes there's these people in our lives that we're like, oh yeah, that's just Bob. And then you're like, when you think about it, you're like, I don't know a damn thing about Bob. So, I mean, maybe that was the case with David for you, or I'm just curious, what did you know about this guy? What was your relationship? Things like that.
He kind of came out of nowhere, and he was a very close friend of my future brother-in-law, Neil Payne. And they went out to Camp Pullard together and did paramilitary training out there. And Dave had a lot of stories, and he talked about being a green beanie, being a green beret, talked about being...
Did you see anything to verify this ever? Did he ever prove that, the Green Beret claim, or no? Because it's just curious. I mean, obviously, not like anyone would ever show you. It's not like people have questioned mine. It's not like I'm never going to show some of my DD-214, because it's just weird.
There were a lot of questions asked about that.
Yeah.
I have part of my problem is my office looks like a bomb went off in it, and that's because I had to collapse it down, and I'm in less than half the space that I used to have. And so my archives are scattered to the four winds. And a lot of this conversation might be better when I actually find my archives on that. And I can answer that question a lot better. And I haven't resolved all the doubts. I will ask the question, how does Dave get top secret security clearance, considering the past that I shared with him?
Yeah.
But there's a lot about his, like, he did claim to work for Air America. I've never seen that in any other source. That might be a good question for a FOIA.
No, I don't disagree.
What the record does reflect. And if my new buddy, Jesse Trinity, wanted to help me with that, I would probably, he's the man. Although apparently you got to wait 30 years to get any results.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. I would like to try that. I would like to try that with see what we can find out. And we need to do the same with Strassmeier.
Well, Kirk, you gotta wait 30 years to not get any results, because this has been 30 years for them to get the FBI to not comply with FOIA requests.
I know. It's disheartening to see what Jesse has gone through to try to, but the problem is, it's kind of like the Epstein files. Krakatoa is going to erupt again before we ever see any of the people names on that list.
Yeah, which is kind of what I was alluding to here.
And one of the things that maybe others that are researching the Oklahoma City bombing, one of the reasons that Americans are so stupid to conspiracy theories, whether it be 9/11 or Oklahoma City or Waco, they cannot fathom a government that they love being that evil. They
Mhm.
can't. They cannot. Their brains would explode like from They Live. You know, they can't fathom a government that would be that evil.
Mhm.
That's the problem with selling it to mainstream America. And
Well, with I think maybe we should probably refocus back in on Strassmeier, because ironically, kind of what you're pointing to, this idea of like not understanding what your government's capable of, I think that might kind of get us a little bit into that. If you follow the tale of Strassmeier, I think one thing a lot of people point out, and I get why, and you obviously have a different take of why sometimes people say he glows or whatever, is because his story does seem to pop along the line of other people that have certain distinguishable patterns amongst them. And this even goes up into including things that have basically been confirmed, like Pat Kahn, for example. We'll probably get into his time in San Saba with TLI and other such stuff like that. So it is like, there is like, you can see why people draw certain conclusions from Strassmeier. Obviously, being near those things doesn't mean you are one of them, but people do, you notice patterns. And so this is why we're here. We're having this discussion.
Right.
And I'm open to there being perhaps different ways to understand things. And so that's what we're here for. But I mean, I think inevitably we're going to, kind of cut into a little bit of that evil, or instigating at the very least, nature
Right.
of what's going on in the background. But I guess maybe just a kind of good spot to just kind of start with is just kind of, I guess your relationship, your introduction to Strassmeier, and then I guess because that kind of naturally leads into just
I'm a
kind of
reenactor. I've been a reenactor for over 50 years, actually 54 years. And this was the time in 1980, go back to 1988. This was the time of the 125th anniversary of the Civil War between the states. And I was part of a battalion, a regiment of independent reenactment companies all across the Trans-Mississippi, which is Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And we were going to Gettysburg as the 4th Texas Infantry. We were going to be part of Hood's Texas Brigade. And I was going to, as I had at Manassas, I had commanded a foreign company that had come over from Europe, from France, Germany, and the Netherlands. And they were my company. We were the Texas Foreign Legion. And they had been part of the Red River Campaign, which was a reenactment that took place representing the 1864 Red River Campaign. It was in 1994. And that was the second time that we had done it. But Gettysburg was going to be the first time in 88 that these Europeans were going to come over. And I was supposed to be the company commander. That was going to be my company. But I was involved with the sedition trial, which had just ended in April and May. And we were leaving for Pennsylvania in July, and I just couldn't get ready. So I resigned. And I had resigned actually before the trial. And so a friend of mine by the name of Fred Adolphus, who was an Army employee, he was former Army, he was working for the Army as a civilian, lived in Germany. And he was going to bring all the Germans over. And they were going to come to Dulles Airport, which is near Manassas, Virginia. And they were going to get picked up by another reenactor buddy of mine by the name of Petrusky. That name sounds familiar. Mm-hmm. And his father was Vince Petrusky, a retired lieutenant colonel, not colonel as everybody wants to call him. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And they flew in, picked up their van, and stayed at Vince Petrusky's house and set out the next day in their rented van to go to Gettysburg. And then they went back the same way. So Andy spent 2 nights with Vince Petrusky, and at the time told him that he wanted to work for federal law enforcement and could Vince help him. And Vince was kind of a mover and shaker, did stuff for clients. And anyway, Andy went back to Germany, and then at Vince's invitation flew back to stay with Vince Petrusky. And Vince tried to help him, couldn't. said, Andy, you can't sleep on my couch anymore. You're going to have to leave.
Okay, let's hone in on that real quick. I actually have questions even just on the reenactment portion. I have to ask. It seems odd to me. I have no idea. Now, for a few reasons, like it seems odd to me, the idea of, I don't know, Germans literally coming from essentially across the pond in order for a reenactment. And now a little bit info on me, I guess. I'm somewhat the South, to some degree is kindred to my heart, I think, in a lot of ways, but I'm not really technically Southern. I grew up I was born in Maine, and I moved to Tennessee like halfway during high school, and then I joined the military after high school, and then I got moved to Florida. So I've been like most of my adult and like formative teenage years were in like the South. And so like, but I was born in the Union, so like I do have a little bit of like that Union type Yankee, like at least at first, like kind of, if anything, it was almost off-put by like Confederate flags and such. But then once you've lived in the South for a while, you get the idea. You're like, whatever. You get the idea. I understand the idea of reenactment. I've seen a lot of reenactments and stuff. So it's a big part of the culture from where I'm from in Tennessee, and so I understand that. And so like, but even more so, the idea of a German group of people. Now, I know there's a military base right there, so maybe I can understand the concept of like Americans coming over for, I don't know, some sort of TDY or something.
Some of the German Americans over there in the Army are reenactors, but Germany has a reenacting tradition that goes back quite a ways, especially regarding the Wild West.
Okay. Now that makes sense.
Author by the name of Karl May that Hitler read. He loved Karl May stories when he was a kid. This guy never went to the United States, but he wrote Westerns. And so there's a Karl May Society, and it's kind of like the Old West, and they have rendezvous and all kinds of meets. And from that, interest in reenacting started. And they actually have Confederate and Union reenactors over there. And of course, the ultimate for them is to come to the United States. And there's Americans in the military salted among them. And Andy, and one of the things that attracts Germans to reenacting, they can be proud to be a Confederate or proud to be a Union soldier, but you can't be proud. Back then, you could not be proud to be a German. That's changed a lot. That's changed a lot in the last probably decade and a half. But back then, you were not allowed to be proud to be German.
You struck on something a little bit there, and I think a lot of people have either subconsciously or consciously made this connection here. And that kind of what you drove there. Really, it's not so much, although I think maybe there was a conflation and they associated German with this. But it was really the idea of like, they couldn't be proud of the Nazi heritage. And I think a lot of people conflate that in a lot of ways for certain reasons with like the Confederacy and stuff. And I think from my recollection of like what was going on in Germany during that period of history, during the time when Strassmeier came over, they were pretty sure that, from my understanding, there was a pretty strong push of denazification. So a lot of people make these connections here of like, now this would kind of be, let's be real, a perfect nexus, as we literally kind of just described the methodology of how this would be an easy for those, in the fold to kind of have a nexus, say some sort of German intel or something, kind of a perfect nexus. You have the military thing, you have the reenactment, kind of a perfect way to kind of perfectly leak you in from one realm into the other. So I think people notice that. Obviously, that's just complete speculation, but I don't know, maybe if there's anything to that.
They have said that Andy's grandfather was a founder of the Nazi Party. That's not true. He had a low party number. He was one of the early members to join the National Socialist German Workers' Party, but he was not a founder. As a matter of fact,
he was like double digits, right?
I found a picture of his grandfather at one of the reenactments of the beer hall putsch, and he's a couple of feet behind Hitler. But his family had to live that down. That's not something you can go boast about in Germany. That certainly is not going to help his father's political career. Wanting to be in the military is not something that a German politician's son's supposed to do. the military is now was disfavored in those days, and they had to live down the Nazi past and any ties the family had to it. So anyway, so for Andy, getting in the Wild West thing was one of the ways that he could be proud to be something, even if he couldn't be proud to be German.
Makes sense.
He was good at it. He was good at it.
Yeah. All right. So now we left off at Petruski, but so let's kind of hone in on him. Obviously,
I don't know
okay.
that Petruski knew Andy's father. That I've seen that in print. That he knew his father. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't.
Yeah,
I've never heard
rumor.
Andy or Colonel Petruski say that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen a source in that either, and that's honestly I don't think anything. That isn't really like a major game changer that I'm aware of, but that is kind of the connection that I'm aware of. Usually people say that it's like Petruski knew his dad or something. Like that's a vague connection.
Somehow Colonel Petruski's CIA.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you even yourself, I believe, in you point out that there's a family story of sorts of them.
Family story.
Essentially, which let's be real, maybe not a CIA, but you're doing counter intel at the very least.
He was a contract agent in the 1950s.
Yeah. So I mean. Potato.
Right, but his service was in the United States Air Force.
Yeah.
Not the CIA.
Yeah, well, I mean...
hired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And I could probably find out what his job was. I'm still in touch with his son.
Oh, I'd be interested. That'd be
I could find out what his job was.
I heard it was OSI. That's my understanding, which would be... kind of, that's why I say potato. That's kind of like military intel. That's what that is. But I might be wrong. It might be somebody else.
His son would tell me.
Yeah. So let me know follow up, or maybe if I recall.
Yeah. I'm surprised I never thought of that before finding out what he did. But after he retired, he became kind of a wheeler dealer, and he had Arab clients. And if you've heard the story about Andy trying to having the deal with Lufthansa about the 747s they were going to sell, he was trying to figure out a way for Colonel Petruski to hold on to him in the United States. And he figured if he could swing a deal that if Colonel Petruski could find a buyer for these 747s that Lufthansa wanted to sell, and he got the information from his dad, who got it on the golf course with Lufthansa executives, he figured, well, he'd be able to stay in the United States, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And when the Oklahoma State Troopers busted into his car and found his briefcase, they found these papers which became public, and everybody was thinking, gee, what's going on here? So,
we have a German national with documents to procure 747s for Saudi Arabian nationals.
I don't know how you would bomb the Murrah building with a 747.
Yeah, well, people just raise a few eyebrows.
Yeah, but anyway, that's where that came from, and Andy really did want to go to work in the United States somehow, and Vince couldn't do it, and so he booted him out. And Andy knew about me from his friend Fred Adolphus, and so he called me and said he was coming through, and I invited him to come and stay.
So he was living with. So he came over the States. He was living with Petruski, and that was in what, Houston, I think, right? Or
no, that was Manassas.
Manassas. Okay, I'm just mixing up places. And so then from there,
I was living in Houston.
You were living in Houston. So he came to you in Houston, and all right, go on.
And we became friends, and I learned that he was a military miniaturist and a painter and an expert at it, and a really an expert on ancient history. Anyway, Dave and I tried to find a way for him to stay legally, and that was what we were going to do, was to get him a job in Dave's computer company that he was starting. And his brother, who had a computer business in Munich, would front the money for Andy to work there, because he couldn't legally work in the United States. And it just nothing we did ever worked out. Nothing worked out. Andy didn't know anything about computers to speak of, and didn't really have his heart in it. And he spent a lot of his time painting miniatures in the middle of the night and then sleeping most of the day. And that's where he got his nickname, Zollverein, Because if you came to my apartment in the middle of the afternoon, you would see him asleep on my couch. And he would get up about 4 or 5 in the afternoon and have breakfast, which, and then he would start drinking beer, and then he would start painting miniatures. And he might be doing that till 3 or 4 in the morning and then go to bed, start over.
Living the life of
life with Andy.
Living the life of a dejected German painter.
Yeah, and when I got married, Andy had to move, and that's when he lived with Holloway for a brief time, and also with my brother-in-law Neil Payne, who was a chiropractor.
It's David, to be clear, because I know there's 2 Holloways, right? It was David that
Holloway,
lived with.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And Neil Payne, my brother-in-law, and Neil Payne introduced Andy to the Texas Light Infantry.
Mm-hmm. All right, and this is where we're cooking now. So he got into Texas Light Infantry. That was being run by another Holloway, correct? If is my understanding. It's Robert, I believe. Robert Holloway?
I think that's Robert Holloway, yes.
Yeah, okay. This might be a little more hazy for you, but I mean, what do you know about Robert Holloway? I know he's a little bit of an interesting
Robert Holloway is
fellow
a
as well.
Vietnam veteran, also served with the Rhodesian Light Infantry as an officer. He lost a good bit of his forearm from a VC grenade in Vietnam. Holloway, though, was up in Idaho. I don't think he was really involved with the Texas Light Infantry. There was a group in Dallas that was the focus, because, see, the Texas Light Infantry had been part of the Texas State Guard. And when they took their job too seriously, the Texas State Guard kicked all these guys out. And they says, well, to hell with you. So they formed the Texas Light Infantry so they could continue their military training privately. And there was a group out of Dallas, and Robert Holloway, I don't think he ever came down for any of their, I mean, I know Robert Holloway was up in Idaho, and I don't know that he was part of the Texas Light Infantry.
I thought he was always associated as one of the founders. That was always the rumor. I mean, it's always kind of hard to track down the specifics on it. That's kind of what we're getting at here, which is why it's worth.
I don't think so. They were more Texas-centered. And like I said, it was, unless...
That could be my bad. I might be just mixing up characters or something.
Robert Holloway.
Yeah.
And maybe there was. I'd have to ask. I was never a member.
Yeah.
I did reenacting. I used a pattern 1853 Enfield rifle musket, or a model of 1850 foot officer's sword with my weapons of choice.
Now David had nothing to do with TLA, right? Or maybe I'm.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's what it is. I think that answers the question. Once again, the mixing up of the Holloways, because Holloway comes up and all right, there you go.
Involved the Texas Light Infantry.
Okay, so your cause assistant David Holloway, he was okay.
Yes.
All right, there we go.
And now, the thing about San Saba, I just learned about. That's where they actually met, and I read that in Margaret Roberts' book. And according to John Matthews, he saw McVeigh at the San Saba event with Andy Strassmeier.
Yep.
And my problem with that is that Neil Payne and probably David Holloway were both there. David Holloway has a genius IQ and a photographic memory. If he'd have seen anybody as distinctive as Tim McVeigh there, I think he would have remembered it. Neil too. Neil's no dummy. And Strassmeier didn't have competent transportation to get to San Saba. He went with Neil. He was staying with Neil. And so when you hear this malarkey, and that's what it is, malarkey, about Strassmeier getting into keypadding his way into the federal building, and they followed him. That's what you call in Texas bullshit. That's bullshit. That didn't happen. Somebody's lying their ass off to gild the lily on that. And I tried to, Wendy Painting and I tried to figure out where that quote came from, and it's from an unattributed source or anonymous source. So I'll tell you right now, that didn't happen.
Yeah, it is one of those ones that look back. I've said this before when we initially covered it, and this is one of the ones that you look and you're like, okay, maybe this seems a little weak, and this seems a little bit of a weird story. But and I will say this does come from the lore that he got kicked out.
Matthews says that he saw McVeigh there with Strassmeier. That goes against what I know about his interaction with McVeigh, but not impossible. I would like to know. I think we need more information though before we can treat that as a fact. I don't think it's a fact. And of course, Matthews is not available to talk anymore, as I understand it.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if he's.
As far as I know, Andy met McVeigh at the Tulsa Gun Show, and I still got his Army shirt.
Do you know something I don't know about Matthews, or is there some information I missed? Is there a rumor going around he's passed away?
Matthews said to Jesse is that he saw Strassmeier and McVeigh at the
you said something that implied he's no longer able to be spoken to. So I was like, I didn't know if you meant that just because I know he went back into hiding. I didn't know if you meant he's.
I don't know that he's talked since.
Okay.
He refused to testify.
I know there were rumors that he was in bad health, so I just was like, I didn't know if maybe you knew something I didn't know. Like
just from what I read in the book.
Okay, all right, cool.
He backed out of testifying.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So I thought you were talking about that, but I was like, is he dead?
Consider that a bit of inquiry to see if we could nail down, is it a fact? I've been wrong before, and I'm not perfect. I don't have all the knowledge. Did McVeigh and Strassmeier, were they together in San Saba? I don't know. I wasn't there.
But now, do you know anything about that? Because obviously now this comes from the rumor, whether I mean, we're kind of exploring to what degree it's founded or not, that he got kicked out of a militia, out of the TLI, and then so it's like, now I was obviously he left at some point. Now, what do you know about that? Was it like on good terms? Was he kicked out?
When we placed him in Elohim City.
Okay.
The only reason he went to Elohim City is because we needed to put him there because we needed him to fall in love with an American citizen so he could marry and stay. I mean, that was the only way he's going to get to stay in the United States, that we could tell. And nobody would be looking for him up there. So
for your purposes, from the outside looking in.
I stayed at Elohim City during the sedition trial for a short time. So I got to know Grandpa Millar and the whole thing at Elohim City. And we stayed in touch. I actually was his attorney of record for a while. When we needed a place to put Andy, we came up with Elohim City, I figured. And maybe he'll fit in. Maybe he'll like it. And we took him up there, and they took him on approval, and he stayed. Okay,
so what kind of was driving at there, it sounds to me like you, and just to clarify, it sounds to me like you, from your perspective, you knew nothing about any sort of kicking out or leaving in any sort of bad terms. For what you know, he left when he left. He left to Elohim, and that was that. So that was. So.
As far as I know, he wasn't kicked out.
Okay.
I can ask Neil about that, and if there was any questions about it afterwards, but I don't think so. I think Neil would have told me at that time. Okay. If that had been true, we would have been very cautious about putting him into Elohim City, which we know they had trouble with law enforcement before, and that people might want to infiltrate, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we had heard that, and I'll ask Neil just to check, and Neil's going to read the book now that I'm done with it. I think we would have heard about that. We probably wouldn't have sent him to Elohim City if there had been problems with him, suspicions about him. So as far as I know, there weren't any.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not a member.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the guys. I'll ask my brother-in-law about that and see what he says, and I'll get back to you on that.
Now, obviously, you mentioned Matthews a little bit ago. Now, there's reason to have questions about what the hell was going on TLI. This is essentially, basically, what is it, between Don Jarrett and I believe Matthews himself. There's literally an email verification, I believe, of some sort from Don Jarrett, his handler, saying that yes, TLI. The thing he mentioned as a back and forth said something about TLI and being informants, and he essentially verified that yep, that was one of our informant groups over there. So that's been essentially verified. There was a whole, what was it, Newsweek? Or I might be messing up the publication. Yeah. There was a whole story around that time that kind of got botched in its rollout.
And as an attorney, I advised them, and Neil would have advised them, no illegal bullshit talk. I don't want to hear any illegal bullshit talk. And if you talk like that, I'm shutting you down. And if you do it again, you're getting your ass kicked out of here. Now, that was the rule.
Yeah. Now essentially,
no illegal bullshit.
Yeah. Now there were people from PatCon essentially that were basically I know in there obviously we have math.
Trying to stir him up, and Neil is willing to do an affidavit for Jesse so that we can get a FOIA report on the 2 PatCon guys that Neil knew. What were their names again? Do you recall offhand? It's Rossi.
That was what I was trying to remember. Yep,
and I forget the other guy's name. I think his name was Dave something.
Yeah, I think Rossi was in the original version of the Newsweek story very prominently.
And see, they tried to entrap Neil. They went after him. And they came up here to Black Mountain after we moved and tried again. Is
Neil the one in the Newsweek story? I don't know. Maybe you don't know that offhand.
I don't remember seeing it.
Because they're in the story, they're giving it back and forth with Rossi, and
knows these guys, and he kind of figured something fishy was up with them.
Yeah, I mean they weren't being too subtle. If you read the accounts,
illegal BS, he would tell them, "You need to shut up."
Yeah, I mean to be fair, if you read the accounts, they weren't being too subtle. But now, I mean, to be fair, to give a little credence to kind of like what really happened, you also got to keep in mind, I don't trust any of these people whatsoever who's mentioned, the PatCon, any of this. As you mentioned, your evil government. So it was like, I know a lot of people cast aspersions of Strassmeier, myself included to some extent, but at the same time, there's a lot of information we're missing, and there's a lot of characters lurking around that could be doing all sorts of different things. And there's a lot that we're missing. So it's like, I know we're painted with a very slim picture here. So there's always witting assets, unwitting assets, witting assets that have learned to understand things being one way or the other. So yeah, go ahead.
This book gave me a lot to think about. Okay. And I am going to think about it. And, but my current stance is, on Strassmeier, the other side has the burden of proof of showing that he's not what I have defended. Okay. But I am open-minded about it, and I'm a historian, and I think like a historian, and I know how to weigh evidence like a lawyer, and I will. And so if you give me as your evidence nonsense, I'm going to say that. But if it's credible and needs to be investigated further, I will admit it. I will admit it. And there are some things in here that I haven't seen before that Margaret goes into that I need to think about and investigate further. And at some point, I might need to talk to Andy about it.
100%. Yeah.
I might have to.
All right. Now we're at the point in the story where we're up at Elohim, which maybe we'll be able to spread off a little bit more from Strassmeier, though, that we're at Elohim City. There's a lot of other characters I'd like to ask you about. I'm kind of curious. Maybe you have a lot of knowledge in some of those people. For example, a lot of the ARA guys, I guess you probably know offhand.
I read Mike Brescia.
Okay.
I knew Mark Thomas, where they talk about Andy and Brescia being roommates. I believe that's true. Andy said later that he didn't think that the ARA guys trusted him, is why they never invited him to be a member. They didn't trust him, probably because he was foreign. They ended up selling him or giving him one of the getaway vehicles, and it actually ended up in my driveway. And when I figured out what it was, I had one hell of a time getting rid of it because I didn't have the title. But anyway, so I read a lot what Margaret Roberts talks about and the ARA guys. And Commander Pedro sent me all of his videotapes. And,
like under as Langan or as Pedro?
Commander Pedro. I think that was Peter Langan.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, did he send it to you like after the fact, after he'd been exposed, or like
what was going on?
Okay, so like as okay
videos. I never watched it. I don't think I ever watched any of it. Maybe 2 seconds of it, and I didn't read his screeds either, and ended up tossing it out. And I wish I hadn't, because then I would have it.
Yeah, I mean,
That
who would have thought?
Probably the dumbest thing I did in dealing with Strassmania. But I didn't realize what it was I was getting. I had no idea what.
I mean, it was pretty goofy.
Yeah, but yeah, I got it all. They sent it. It was mailed to me, and I noticed in the book that they found one that was going to be sent to Louis Beam and never got mailed apparently. And they apparently sent it out to a bunch of people that they considered leaders in the movement. And mine went in the trash. Sorry.
So we got Brescia, Langen. It sounds to me like that's the extent of your knowledge of Langen. Langen was just the
videos. I might have
videos.
known Stediford.
Stediford, okay. You might
that
have.
Name sounds familiar. I'd have to go see if I find a file on him. I might have talked to him or known him. I don't think I met McCarthy.
Guthrie?
No, I didn't meet Guthrie.
You didn't meet Guthrie?
No.
Sean Kenny. That's a minor one. So
that name sounded familiar, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think he the big thing with him is I think I forget the specifics, but essentially I think he got like some pedophilia charges, or kicked off or something crazy for being a rat essentially.
Really?
Yeah, which okay. But anyways, all right, I had to ask about those characters. The Kehoe brothers. There's always a couple characters I find particularly intriguing, especially considering their later Mueller murders, which were pretty gruesome. And then, they were on America's Top Wanted or Most Wanted for a while.
I recognize the name, but I don't know why.
Yeah, they were in and out of the Elohim
murders. And Kehoe, it sounds familiar to me, but I don't know if I just read about the Mueller killings at some point, or
you probably just heard them being alive in that time.
I don't think I ever talked to them. I don't think so.
And
if I find that that's not true, I'll let you know.
All right, cool. I know you spent a lot of time up there. Obviously, I guess it's worthwhile asking you about your interactions with Millar and kind of your perspectives on Elohim City. So
it was kind of the Smurf village. They had the big Smurf church, and they were Christian identity, but they were not really rabid about it. And I saw people of every race and stripe in their sanctuary. I mean, not as congregants, not as members of the congregation, but as guests. I don't think that Millar was really stringent about it being a whites only compound. I think there might have been a sign there that said that, but it wasn't rigidly enforced because, like I said, I've seen Chinese people there, I've seen Hispanic people there, and Millar didn't seem to have a problem with it. And I lived there for a short period of time during the sedition trial, but I just couldn't take it. I was in a mobile home heated with wood fire, and it got freezing cold at night up there in that part of Arkansas. And if that fire went out and I didn't wake up, I would wake up to a freezing cold mobile home. No hot water in the mobile home. I would have to go to the sanctuary, and they had an outside spigot that dripped warm water, and that's where I would take my shower. And then I would have to get into my little Datsun and drive 36 miles in winding country roads to get to Fort Smith. That's no way to live, not if you're in a trial in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So I had to abandon that and actually pay for an apartment in Fort Smith. I couldn't take it. But I stayed in touch with them. I maintained friendly relations. If you don't like deer meat, don't eat there. And it's called mountain goat because they shoot deer year round, but they don't want the kids keying in any game warden that they're shooting deer out of season. There was another fugitive from the CSA and the order that was there at the time that that they allowed to stay there, and he was eventually just before turning himself in, they arrested him, and he actually did a couple of years, and now he's lived a blameless life ever since. But it was polygamous, and you had to be able to buy your wife a house before you could get another wife. So the better you did, the more wives you could have. I don't know of anybody that had more than 3.
Yeah, I mean, man can only do so much.
You can only do so much. One's been quite enough for me.
Yeah, I agree. I've been married well over a decade. I laugh when I hear about these. Like, okay.
Anyway, they had there was supposed to be a federal raid on Elohim City one time, and the kids just happened when the raid was coming down their 7 miles of bad road off the bad road highway. Some of the kids at Elohim City were knocking down a tree, and they knocked it down, and it came right down in the middle of the bad road just as law enforcement came up. And they were afraid that they had just walked into an ambush, so they skedaddled out of there. And after that, they were content to use the telephone, the one phone line into Elohim City to talk to Grandpa to try to work things out if they had any problems. So the sheriff had a healthy respect for their capabilities and decided it was better to, smoke peace pipe and be friendly than be assholes.
Yeah. On the Christian, on the Millar's group there, I guess we don't need to spend a lot of time on this. I just want a little bit of clarification. You mentioned Christian identity, but I've seen it characterized different weird ways, and I think it might just be that people don't really understand Christian identity. I just wanted a clarification from you.
Monolithic.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Being Christian identity, okay, what kind? It's just like, are you Baptist? Are you Catholic? Are you Lutheran? Are you Presbyterian? It's the same with identity.
Yeah.
Christian identity's been around a long while. Queen Victoria believed in it, and so did Queen Elizabeth I of England. And it used to be called British Israelism. And it basically believed that the people of Europe are the lineal descendants of biblical people. When Israel was part of the diaspora, they believe that the British, the Germans, are a servant people for God, and that they are lineally descended from biblical people. That's basically it. Now, you have some, like up at Aryan Nations, that believe in what's called seed line identity. And that means that's where you get this story about the Jews being the spawn of the devil. And if you have one drop of non-white blood in you, then you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And most Christian identity, a lot of Christian identity, are not anywhere near that strict.
Yeah.
But they basically believe that as the covenant people, they are a servant people, and then their job is to bring the message to everybody else.
Yeah,
So
I've just heard it described
that way.
I've just seen it characterized some places as things like paganism or all different odd things, and you're like, they can't seem to figure out what they're describing.
Have pagans and identity generally don't get along. That's what destroyed the order. Half of the order were pagan and half were Christian identity, and they found they couldn't work with each other, so they split. And of course, your Morris D's, creeps are going to characterize everybody that's identity as the seed line variety. That Jews are the spawn of Satan, and if you've got one drop of black blood, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Now that's just part of their propaganda outreach, and it's not based on truth. These guys lie about the people they supposedly investigate all the time, and I've been pointing out their lies and inconsistencies for 40 years. So.
Well, on that, another person that I think you and obviously Andy may consider to be a liar, and obviously I'm open to the idea possibly, but someone who recently was found to be dead, died, Carol Howe. You already know where I'm going with that, so just kind of, I think you had if I recall correctly, I believe you might have had a statement. I know Andy did. Something a little bit, I forget, it was something a little kind of like along the lines of good type thing or something. Obviously, he didn't like her much. I think you had a statement, but I guess just kind of, it'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your thoughts about her. I don't know, you guys' thoughts after the fact. I don't know, because for those who are unaware, she was an informant in Elohim City. So
one of the things that leads me to think that Andy's on the level, and this needs to be countered, but this is a fact of my own knowledge. Andy started to come to me about Carol Howe and said, she's a Fed, she's undercover. I know she is. And I can't get anybody here at Elohim City to do anything about it. And she came on to him. She tried to get him in the sack, and I think she admitted that. And Andy wasn't about to touch her. No, not that she wasn't pretty. It's just that if he got caught messing around with somebody like Carol Howe, that would get him kicked out of Elohim City, and he didn't want to leave. He wanted to marry one of those girls and settle down and get a piece of land and be part of their little Wild West kingdom. And so it was, and he knew when she tried to pull the let's paint grenades Christmas ornaments, he knew something was up. Andy, whatever you think about him, is not stupid. And he knew the tactics of an agent provocateur, and she had all the classic symptoms of somebody that needed to make a name for herself. So, you know, our take on Carol Howe has always been she is a liar, and they were only paying her $120 a week, but anyway, you got to give information if you're going to get that $120 a week. Now, there was another guy, and I think his name was Lee, last name was Clary, and he was a Klansman. Oh gosh, what's his first name? Robert Lee Clary, I think, was a Klansman that was born again. Black guy converted him, and he became anti-Klan, and he was virulently anti-Klan and anti-racism, and we actually became friends. And he's dead now, I'm sad to say, but he took up for Andy, knowing that Andy was technically on the other side, by saying he is right about Carol Howe. She's a liar and she's a tramp. She's a whore. And she will do whatever she needs to get a story. And Robert Lee Clary, like I said, you couldn't ask for a better character witness if you were on trial for being a white supremacist, because he wasn't. He was, and he was part of white Aryan resistance in his day. And I actually represented him when he got arrested at a march in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. But he changed and gave his life to the Lord and anti-racism and worked on it. And he worked with me to help expose Carol Howe at the time. So that leads me to think that Andy was on the level. He came to me and said, look, this gal's trouble, and you need to help me work with Grandpa to get her out of there, because she's an undercover agent. She's a Fed.
This brings something else to mind. It was another couple characters I wanted to ask about. This is not somebody I know a ton about, but I might as well ask you. The Ward brothers, and I guess it kind of naturally leads into my next thought. I know Carol Howe, I believe, actually thought the John Doe 1 sketch, I believe, was one of the Ward brothers, if I recall correctly.
I remember that as well.
So it's like I just kind of worthwhile asking you about.
I met
and just
the Wards a couple of times. They low wattage. They were not the smartest guys I've ever met, and they were the ones that I think were driving Andy's station wagon when it was impounded in town from Elohim City. And the Ohio State trooper burgled the car and found the papers in there, including the 747 deal with Lufthansa. And it was the Ward brothers that were driving Andy's car at the time.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, I might have met him a couple of times, but except to say that not too bright. I didn't know much more else about him. Okay,
just want to get your impressions of them, because I wanted to pivot into John Doe 2 and just kind of your thoughts on that. I mean, John Doe 2 is obviously a thing that happened. I think weirdly enough, we're here to talk about.
Know that. Yes.
Yeah, we're here to talk about. We sort of talked about Strassmeier a lot today, and for some reason, people always jump to him. I don't know if it was maybe just a product of the time. Maybe if I was older in the mid '90s, maybe it would have made sense, the news cycle or something. But for me, looking back, re-examining this stuff, reading about it, I don't really get it. When you look at the John Doe 2 descriptions and stuff, obviously it complicates it a little bit more when you read books like, for example, like Mark Ham's book on the topic that proposes like a multiple John Doe 2 theory. Right. But even then, even with a multiple John Doe 2 theory, I don't recall many accounts of descriptions that really ever seemed to match with Strassmeier. He had a pretty unique look. And so just kind of your thoughts on John Doe 2, and I guess particularly Strassmeier, or why that was even a thing. Like, I have my suspicions, but I never really thought he was John Doe 2.
He was working on a fence line for a little old lady outside of Elohim City on the day of the 19th. So we know where he was. The FBI checked it out. I got the canceled checks, and I got her calendar that shows the days Andy worked. And he was there on the 19th and saw it on TV later that day. So I know where Andy was. And, of course, that's when Andy was in Germany, and we set up the phone conference. And Andy gave an affidavit. I was able to get the checks, and I've got those. And if you wanted to see them, I'd be happy to share them with you. The canceled checks and the calendar that the little old lady wrote down when Andy and the other guys worked for her, and that's Andy's alibi. So I believe I know where he was on the 19th, and so far I haven't seen anything that says differently. I do know that there was a John Doe number 2. And we've, I believe that ever since, for years, because of the witnesses that they did not call that, saw McVeigh there and somebody else. So we know there's a John Doe number 2. So we know we know it's a conspiracy, and we know the government's lying and holding out.
No, I did say, the little bit, this just so happened, I promise, this was like, minutes before, Richard Booth actually put out, I don't know if he saw, I did announce I was going to be interviewing you, so maybe he was like, decided to put out a piece on this, but he found, I guess, one of the 302s of what you're referring to. He put out a Substack today, and here's a 302 from Otis J. Phelps. That's for essentially Andy accounting for him being with the, at Jetty Keenes is the name of the lady.
That's her name. Yep.
So
Keen, that's right.
Now his contention, and I'll admit, is a little bit obviously the descriptions.
Would you mind sharing that with me? I'd love to read that.
Oh, sure. I can. We can go ahead and I can give you the sum of it, but I can send it over to you in a minute. It's pretty dang short, but really it's just the 302. Actually, if you want to right now, I can, is it a link? Yeah, I'll send the link over actually in the private chat if you want to look at it right now.
Sure.
And, but anyways, it's a 302, and he puts the contention and he makes the contention here that's a little bit odd. It doesn't seem to match up because Otis J. Phelps has a 302 describing someone approximately in their early 20s, approximately 5'10", approximately 150, hair cut too close to say what color, but may have been light colored. Now, I will say in the Substack, Richard kind of describes him as blonde hair, although it's a little bit different than saying too short, light colored. Well, that's like the point he's getting at, is I think that it doesn't match. And then tall and skinny with a skinhead haircut.
Skinhead haircut.
Which I don't know. I guess it's a little bit off, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, because he's 6'1", I'd say he probably was 160 to 180, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, but that is the 302 since it just happened to drop. So I just wanted to throw it out there so you want to see it.
In my Andy file.
Yeah, so that's there. But yeah, so that's and then here's his driver license too, his Tennessee driver license. Which wasn't there some weirdness with his driver license too, which he was somehow able to get that, and it was odd that he was even able to get it because
staying with a friend of mine in East Tennessee when he got booted out of Elohim City, and I think he went and got a Tennessee driver's license, and then he ended up in the same apartment building as my office. And he went to work for a German restaurant and was doing actually very well when we had to make the decision to get him out of the country. So it's a shame because he was finally settling down and he liked the work and made friends, and then we had to spirit him away. So,
well, I've kept you for a pretty dang long time. I know there's totally stuff that I've forgotten about. I guess just real quick, one just popped in my mind. I have a feeling you probably didn't actually interact with this guy, but did you ever run into Roger Moore at all in your stuff?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Well, that was worth ask.
I didn't recognize when I was reading through Margaret's book.
Okay. Well, all right. I don't know if there's anything else. And I know you kind of hit me up as sort of when this started. And I think you had wanted to talk to me about Hallway, and it sounds like I assume we touched on that. to your likings. But I don't know if there's anything. Oh, actually, take a moment. You said you read Margaret's book. I haven't read it yet. So I just want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, I haven't gotten to. I mean, I've read Wendy's book. I've read Ham's book. I've read Roger's book. I've read Holloway's book. Was it Holloway? Am I mixing up names again? There's a Holloway, right? Or am I mixing? Yeah, there's a Holloway. OK bomb writer. But anyways, I've read a bunch of them. I haven't gone to Margaret's book. I think I actually
book?
Is it? Huh?
Have you read Andrew Gumbel's book?
Yeah, that's Charles. I was referring to this Charles. It was Gumbel/Charles. Yeah.
And just to finish, he makes a point about Andy's visa, which I provided him a copy of, or his passport rather. And he had somebody look at, I think from the State Department, and apparently there's some stamping in there that indicates that he got some kind of special status that he wouldn't have got just as a tourist visa. And that probably needs more investigation. I would really like to know, maybe get an expert opinion on that. What does that tell us about him coming to the United States? And apparently he had multiple entries. And the other thing that I want to know, there is somebody I'm thinking it might have been Moore that quoted him, was that there was somebody in the State Department that had a CIA contact that said that Strassmeier was working for a government. And we need to do better than that. That's not good enough. I will not accept that as evidence. That's hearsay on hearsay, and they're going to need to do better than that. And so maybe it's going to take more time to come up with the truth, but that's the kind of thing that I correct when I see it, if I know of my own knowledge that it's not true or just doesn't make sense. And I will out it because, and like I said, if the Strassmania guys can shift the burden of proof, I'm going to follow the evidence. And, and if I have to tell Andy I'm not going to represent you anymore, I'll do it. But I need to be able to do that with a clear conscience.
Fair enough.
Not being fair to him, and I want to be fair to history. I think we all have a duty to get this right before we shuffle off this mortal coil.
100%. Well, with that, I've kept you for a long time. I don't know if there's anything particular you want to touch on about this. I'm sure there's something, like I said, that I'll kick my butt for being like, I should have asked him about this later.
Well, I enjoyed Margaret's book, and I recommend people read it. It's a good compendium of a lot of the conspiracy theories that are out there. And whether you agree with it all or not, it's all there. And she has been kind of at the epicenter of the Trinity thing with Jesse. And so she has a sympathetic perspective, and she's a very readable writer. I finished the book in 2 days. And
it's one of those type of reads.
She is a good writer, and she knows how to tell a story and suck me in. Of course, I have an interest in to know what it says, but I found I don't agree with everything, all of her conclusions. I don't agree, but I do agree with her take that the government has continued to profit from this tragedy and has stolen even more liberties from the people and continued to get worse and move more into the bad guy column than they even were back in 1995. And if we're going to save this republic, I think we need some answers. And so I would recommend any intelligent American needs to read her book.
Well, I haven't read it yet, so I technically can't say that, but I'd say you're probably correct. And if not, there's plenty of other Oklahoma City bombing books to read. There's Wendy's, there's Charles, there's all sorts of other ones.
I've got to take on Wendy's book. I haven't read it yet, but I'll take it on.
I'll be interested to see when that happens. But with that, I'm going to let you go. If there's anything you have to promote, I mean, maybe we'll have to do this again some other time. I'm sure there'll be something.
I will say what I'm doing now is I consider also important work. I don't know if you heard that Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has agreed to restore the Reconciliation Memorial, which was also known as the Confederate Memorial, to Arlington National Cemetery. And I am the attorney of record for the lawsuit against the previous regime Secretary of Defense, who removed the Reconciliation Memorial. And I think, had a lot to do with getting it put back, and I'm very proud of that. And we've now got to see that the promise is kept and that the memorial goes back into Arlington National Cemetery. And it's a grave marker for the Jewish sculptor who was the first Jewish cadet at VMI and a Confederate veteran that constructed that. So Morris Dees, I actually represent a Jewish family whose ancestor built the Confederate Reconciliation Memorial. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, asshole. And anyway, I'm very proud of that. It was a lot of work, and that's what I've been doing. Southern heritage work, Confederate flags, kids in schools that couldn't display Confederate symbols. I've been doing that since 1995, when essentially the right wing ran me off because of the Oklahoma City bombing and the Strassmeier conspiracy stories, and because of the Freeman standoff. I was obviously a CIA, according to the Spotlight, I was a CIA Mossad agent. So why are we entrusting our charitable dollars to that clown? So they ran me off. So I went to work for the Confederate community. So that's what I do now.
Well, all right. Well, with that, for those who want to support what I'm doing over here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, follow me on Twitter at TowerGangJose. Also leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. If you want to support the show in the best way you really can with money, do that over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. The lowest level is $2. That's where you get access to early episodes. I do about 1 to 2 of those a week. Usually keep about 4 of those behind the paywall at any given time. So that's weeks of paywalled content. You also get access to the Telegram, and also to the pre-show and the priority for the call-ins on me and Austin's weekly live call-in show. You also get an ad-free RSS feed. Also, the highest level of my Patreon, I read them off every episode, is a big thank you to them. I have my previous co-hosts on Tower Gang at Learn to Toad, at Abrogate D's, at ZOVRECK, at _Invisiel, Tim Tuttle, at Johnny Klebold, Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, and then big fan of the show, Tormay, at Wayne Taculus, and then not Mossad, because there's a funny guy who likes me to say that every time. And with that, guys, we're out of here. We will see you on the next one. Thank you for joining us, Kirk. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed this. Nice getting to meet you by Zoom.
Maybe we'll do this again sometime.
And
I'll see you.
yeah, if anybody needs to contact me, if you want, you're welcome to pass their message along to me if you want. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody in your audience might have.
100%. Yeah, if anybody has anything, let me know. He's given the permission to pass on. I'm assuming there's permission to pass on contact information or permission to pass on a message. I don't know which that is. So
well.
Okay.
I prefer email. Email is the best way because it gives me a record. And
all right.
Anybody's welcome to email me. And then if it needs to move into a phone conversation, I can always give them my phone after, I figure out what it is they want. So
if anyone wants his email, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we're out of here.
I'm willing to share. If anybody's got any stuff out of my archives that they would like to see, if I have it, and you're not, Godzilla, I'll send it to you. So,
all right, we're out. Appreciate your time.
Right.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.